Find your fairy tale, slay your dragons. Here we go, everyone. I've been talking about this for a couple weeks now, and I'm so excited that this is the official launch of our live interview series where we talk to a myriad of people from across different careers about how they reached the goals that they dreamed and how they defeated the dragons, the doubts that tried to stop them, and how they even defined what that fairy tale was in the first place. What is that daydream? What is that happily ever after? So I'm really excited that today we're going to get started with an amazing author team that I met about a year ago now. Gilly Segal and Kimberly Jones. First, we're going to talk to Kim, and then Gilly will join us after. And they wrote an incredible book called I'm Not Dying With You Tonight. And I really wanted to start with this book because it is the intersection between news and novel writing for me. It is inspired by headlines, and it is certainly catapulted into notoriety, well-deserved notoriety, because of the current events and the social justice movement and the death of George Floyd and all of the things that we are talking about right now. How do we come together as a community? So when Kim is ready to join us live, we're going to bring her in to talk about a speech that she gave. She has said that speech made her tired. She was tired. She was caught kind of unaware. She was with a filmmaker, documentarian friend of hers, and he just got her talking. And she spoke from the heart. And I don't know if you all had the chance to see her speech. I don't know if you had the chance to see it in my story. There's a good chance that it showed up in your story. And she got passionate, to say the least. And I think that rawness, that passion, really spoke to a moment in this country. And from there, people started retweeting her. People started sharing her speech about the state of race in this country and socioeconomics. And Madonna retweeted her. The Daily Show retweeted her. To say the least, she suddenly became quite the voice for change. And she's going to join us now, right this moment, as I click this magical button that says Kimberly Jones sends a request to be in your video, and then I say view, and then we go live with Kimberly, and she's going to be coming in with us right now. It says waiting for Kimberly, and I have been waiting to see this woman's face in the flesh as close as we can be during COVID. Hello, my friend. Hi.
Hi, I miss you.
I miss you so much, and it's funny because sometimes you meet a person and in 48 hours, you just know that you have that same energy.
Yeah.
And I have been watching what you've been doing. And I just want to say thank you for pausing to even talk to me right now, because you are busy, busy, busy. Did you ever expect that video to catapult you to where you are now?
Oh, God, no. I did not see that coming.
You were just talking.
Yeah, I was just talking. And when we posted it on Instagram, I just thought, like, my friends and family, people who I knew personally who had opinions that I disagreed with, I just hoped that they would see it. Mm-hmm. I was trying to do the old adage of, if I change one person's mind, then it's been successful. I had no idea what it was going to do. The interesting thing is Trujillo, who wrote Fat Angie, which is another amazing YA book, I have her to thank for it going viral. She sent it to a friend of hers, Ernesto, who's an artist and part of the movement. And he has a huge following on Instagram. Hey, Dom. And he posted it, and it was like, once Ernesto posted it, that was it. It went crazy.
It's funny you say it's one person posting it, but I know that I sent you a message when I saw this happen, and I say sometimes a book has a moment, but this moment has a book. Yeah. You and your co-author, Gilly, you had written this book a year ago, and in many ways you'd been writing it your whole life, and it's the story of a Black teenage girl and a white teenage girl who suddenly find themselves in the middle of a high school football game that erupts into violence that is fueled by a racial comment. And they have to confront their own misperceptions about each other as they navigate a shut down city that is all too familiar in current events right now. Yeah. So to have written that book a year ago and then see what happened in the current reality, does it feel strange, fiction and reality coming together, or because you were pulling from reality, it just is kind of organic?
It is kind of organic, but it does feel a little surreal. And the interesting thing about it is there were moments along the way as we were writing the book when that would happen. So I guess we were kind of getting prepared for it to have this moment where it's so connected to people and was so relatable because one of the things that happened is, well, I won't say because some people haven't read the book, but there's
Mm-hmm.
a scene that happens in the book that after we wrote, and keep in mind, Gilly and I started writing this book in 2015. We
Yeah.
were inspired by the civil unrest in Baltimore after the death of Freddie Gray. And there was a news, and Gilly can tell you about the story when she comes on, but there was a news clip that Gilly saw that made her feel like we needed to tell this story. And we got together and decided to tell it in this way. But while we were writing, there was an incident that happened in Charlottesville that was very similar to something that happened in our book. And this would happen continuously. Like as we were writing, we'd write like a couple chapters, and then a week later, a month later, or even sometimes 6 months later, there would be something that happened in real life that was the same as what happened in our book. And so sometimes we, thought it would be better to take it out. Sometimes we were like, we really thought about it and thought it'd be ready to keep it. And so it happened in little like small doses along the way. So then, the book was out for a year, and then the civil unrest of 2020 happened, and there was so much that happened in the book that was similar to what was happening in the real world. And so it was just like, whoa, this book continues to be prophecy.
Yeah, they say write what you know, and in many ways, you lived it, and Gilly was watching something. Did this? I see how busy you are now, and I started this conversation by saying thank you for even pausing because I swear, watching your feed, you are at every protest, every food bank, every opportunity to encourage people to vote. You've become incredibly engaged in civics.
Mm-hmm.
And as an artist, sometimes that goes hand in hand, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But obviously, your art is going to be here. And now you have become a voice for civil rights, for social change.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your fairy tale now? What is the change for you? Did you once say, I want to be a best-selling author? Because you are. And now what do you say?
um, what I say now is I want to, it's twofold, right? There's both my artist side and my activism side. On my artist side, I want to be put in a position where I can continue to tell stories both as an author and as a filmmaker. I can continue to tell stories that touch people and reach people and are relevant in this way. And the interesting thing is that's what I've always wanted to do as an artist. This is always the type of work that I wanted to do. I'm not writing things like I'm Not Dying With You Tonight. There are so many unsung heroes
Mm-hmm.
in America that I would love to tell their stories both on screen and in books. And so my fairy tale is to be able to continue to do that. I'm able to do it now. I have a new book deal. I have some movie stuff that I'm working on, but that's what I want to do as an artist, is continue to be able to tell stories that mean something, that matter, that open the conversation for difficult discussions, that set the stage for what we should be thinking about. As an activist, I really have a big get that I'm openly and okay with talking about. I really want to see changes in the textbooks. I really feel like we have miseducated America. And I think that that's part of why we have this systemic problem that we have, is that we're so unaware of each other. I talk to grown people who have never heard about Japanese internment. The amount of people, the Tulsa massacre started trending after my video went viral. The amount of people who had never heard of it. And even like, it doesn't always have to be trauma, right? Like even like absolutely amazing things. Like, why don't people know about Dr. Charles R. Drew, who was an amazing, Black heart surgeon who created heart surgery as we know it. And so it's like, I want to see real change in the textbooks. So textbook companies know that I'm coming for you.
Watch out, because I say find your fairy tale, slay your dragon. So right now, misinformation is your dragon that you are
Yeah,
setting out
it's definitely
to
my,
slay.
and then Gilly and I have another initiative that we're working on that I'm not going to talk about yet, but Gilly
Okay.
has another initiative that we're working on as well. But in the interim, right now, boots on the ground with what's going on, I want to continue to be a voice for people like Breonna Taylor and
Mm-hmm.
Brooks and people like that. But also in the interim, I know that people are hurting, and on the back of this pandemic and everything, everything that's going on, people, that's why I'm doing food drives. People are starving. People can't pay their rent. People are, even though we're all engaged in what's going on in politics and all those things, there are people who have real disparagements that are attacking them right now. And so I want to continue to be involved in those types of initiatives as well.
I think an important takeaway for people who are watching and thinking about what they wanted out of life, that I want to kind of dig in with you is, a fairy tale can evolve. What you're searching for can change. And what are the ways that you look into your heart? I even think about some of the things that you were posting in the early days after George Floyd's death. I remember one where you literally looked into the camera and didn't say a word. You sighed. You were in a dark room and you sighed. And that said so much to me. And you were digging deep, and you and I had talked a little bit, how do you make your voice be heard? Little did we know that you were just going to get caught in a moment, and a lot of people were going to hear your voice loud and clear. So, how do you suggest to people that they find that purpose if they have this longing to matter, this need to create some sort of lasting good in the world?
Yeah, I think the primary thing is to be honest and live in your truth. And it sounds cliche, but people keep saying it because it's true. Like, live in your true feelings, be honest about the way that you feel. And also, like, try to make sure that honesty is not coming from a self-serving place, and that it's not coming from ego, that it's really coming from genuine concern for not only yourself and your friends and families, but the world as a whole. We live in a global society now. Everything that all of us do affects each other. We can see that with this pandemic. We can see that with the environment. We can see that with the global civil unrest that's happening right now. A lot of people are talking about how people all over the world are taking up this banner for Black Lives Matter. But I'm talking to people all over the world. I'm talking to people in the UK. I'm talking to people in Australia and Belgium and all these people and all these places. And not all of them are just picking it up because they stand in solidarity with us, which is how it started. But a lot of them are picking it up because they have racial injustices in their countries and in their towns. And this triggered something in them to say, I'm going to use what they're doing in the US as, as the prototype for what it is we need to be doing over here, because we're facing, similar injustices amongst our group, like colorism, racism, sexism, like all of this is rampant worldwide. And so we should be working towards becoming a better global society. And so part of what's going to help people, the advice I would give people to help make sure that they are open to their dream come true, is to come from a good place and to do the right thing and to be honest, because people are looking right now in this world. What people are looking for are truth sayers. What people are looking for is honesty, because we've been deceived and we've been lied to for so long, and we're not dumb people. Don't underestimate the people. The people are intelligent and the people are tired. And when people get tired, they will seek the truth. And so if you are a truth giver, people will seek you.
They will, when people are tired, they will seek the truth, and they will say the truth. How do you help people differentiate between anger and change, a desire for, you have said, equality, not revenge. Mm-hmm. And yet, even in your speech, you were incredibly passionate. And I thought it was very interesting because you were delineating the difference between an activist, a protester, a looter, but mm-hmm. watching your own emotional journey as you got from the beginning of what you were saying to the end, I could follow along to see where the pain comes from. Mm-hmm. That explains very much why someone who has nothing, the haves and the have-nots, why they get driven to these extremes. Yeah. So how do we talk about this in a not angry way, in a not accusational way, where we say you and us and them, and we say we, this global community that we're talking about, because I think that's the fire that you've helped to light.
I first of all, I would just like to say that it's okay to let people process their anger, because that's part mm-hmm. of the problem. We don't allow people to process their anger. Anger will turn into a fire, and if fire will destroy everything in its way. And so you have to allow people to have righteous anger, to have warranted anger, and to speak on it. And when you allow people to do that, in speaking on that anger, they process information. When you look at that video, I was processing the information.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so it's like you have to allow people to live in their righteous anger. And then from there, we can all be productive. You know what I mean?
I
But,
do, and I think that's why, Kim, I think that's why your video resonated so much, because it showed people what it felt like. Your Monopoly analogy, I think, was something that where did that come into your life? How did you first start looking at it in that way?
so here's the crazy part is that I had never framed it in that way before. I volunteer with an organization called the Girls Who Brunch Tour, which is an organization for marginalized girls between the ages of 7 and 18. And I teach economics to them. One of the things that I do with them is a workshop where I teach economics, and I use a Monopoly to teach them economics. And so I had just like not too long before that video, had taught my last class with the girls. So it was in the back of my mind, but I never framed it in that way. It was just raw in the moment. And I always like say that I think the ancestors were just like speaking on my behalf, and I was just a vessel. It's funny now, I can't think of his name, but I'm going to have to find his name and post his video. Someone sent me recently now, an activist from the 80s that gave a similar analogy to Monopoly. And I'm like, I swear I had never seen this video before. I hadn't. But I was like, maybe I did in the back of my mind. I like blocked out where it came from. I don't know. But I found this like activist from the 80s who had a similar analogy. And I really want to post his, because his is like, he doesn't get as mad. His is a little more, you know, it's a lecture. So he's actually like giving a lecture to it.
Yeah. I mean, you were lecturing. Lecturing. Here's the thing, though. I'm even looking at the comments coming in right now live, and I do want to make that be part of this conversation too, where a couple of people have said, let us be angry. And it's what you're saying. I think that there needs to be, and think about even when we argue with a friend, we argue with a spouse, what's the most important thing in a very small scale? And I'm in no way trying to belittle what we're talking about, but just in a small scale, what's the first thing before you can believe an apology, or you can believe that somebody is going to change their actions? They have to look you in the eye and say, I hear you. And they have to not tell you that you're playing the victim. And they have to not tell you that your feelings aren't justified. They need to say, I get it. Yeah. And you have every right to be mad. Yep. And then you move forward. So are we still in the mad phase? Are we in the angry phase? Or are we starting to push past that? What is, when we talk about the happily ever after, when we talk about the fairy tale and your next, year trajectory, lifetime trajectory, what do you hope to see?
I hope to see real legislation that is going to make it so that murderers, even if they're in a blue uniform, don't get away with murder. That's first. I think that as I said, my personal plight, what I'm working on, I want to get the textbooks changed. I want to end the miseducation of the American child. The many people, particularly and especially Black people, have contributed so much to what America is, and people need to learn that and be educated about that, and not just in our trauma, but in all of the beautiful, magnificent things that we've added to the world. But that's true of Latinx people and Indian people. And Asian people. And so I want the textbooks changed. I want us to stop lying to American children. And a lot of people will say to me, well, it's just our responsibility to teach our own. No, it's not. It is, the educational system is supposed to be educating people. We cannot let them get a pass on miseducating people. You don't get a pass on that. There are literally textbooks that refer to enslaved people as immigrants or as indentured servants. And then they post these photographs where they're like happily working. And I'm like, that's got to end. And the other thing that I would really like to see, especially like I'm going to hold their feet to the fire. So Biden made his announcement today with And I'm going to hold their feet to the fire and say, what is the economic restitution plan for Black America? Because we have strategically been held at bay from being able to build community wealth through redlining, mass incarceration, redistricting, gerrymandering, and it goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And so there needs to be a plan to rectify that. And so those are the things that I'm looking and hoping we will see change.
If there's someone young who reads your book, your and Gilly's book, and hears what you're having to say right now, mm-hmm. and I don't, it doesn't matter what background, doesn't matter what color, just somebody who says, you know what, I want to make things a more even playing field. I want education, and I want the way schools are funded. I want these things to change. What do you tell that kid?
The power is within you. That is the biggest trick that has been played on us, is we think we don't have any power as the people. The power is to the people. The power is in the people. The politicians work for us. And we have to really wrap our head around that. They work for us. We don't work for them. They work for us. And if they're not doing the job that we need them to do, then we need to hold their feet to the fire and make them do it. We have to show up. We have to show up at these council meetings. We have to call in on the lines about these bills when they come up. We have to vote people out. We have to publicize poor records from people. If there's a judge in your area that's giving harsher sentences to Black and brown children, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think that sometimes, they say that all politics is local, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that sometimes people look at the big picture and they give up if they don't agree with what's happening from the top down, and they forget about the local change. And me being in local news, especially in different cities all across the country, you see the different ways that people aren't involved. Mm-hmm. And, to be involved in your local community is the biggest way to be heard wherever you fall on the opinion spectrum, which is interesting. And I think that for you, I remember something that you said to me. You told me that you were kind of at like a crossroads. You were, I wouldn't say rock bottom, but you were spiraling where you were like, what am I going to do? We all hit those points. I've been there. Everybody probably who's watching has been there. Yeah. And somebody told you to believe in yourself. And how did that play out? Because I think that's so important. And I hope that people who are watching today take that from this conversation, that we become that voice. But you told me you were working in retail, right?
Mm-hmm. So it's like, at the end of the day, it's like we don't have enough faith in ourselves. Yeah. And I've experienced that, right? So this is coming from a place of my own experience. We really feel powerless, but we're so not. Like, we're so not powerless. Like, we have so much power. And it's just like, you really just have to believe in that. You have to believe in your work. And it's so funny. One of the first jobs that I had, I'll tell you this quick story. Yeah. One of the first jobs that I had was I was working as a development assistant on Being Bobby Brown, the Bobby and Whitney reality show. It was like my first TV credit. It's the first, big job that I have. And that was at the height of when the press would just like rip into Whitney and like tear her apart all the time. Mm-hmm. So the AJC we were filming, I wasn't around her that much because I would be at the office, but she would come into the office periodically while we were filming. And I remember that it wasn't the AJC, it was somebody had written this like glowing thing about her, about how she was the voice of a generation and all this stuff. And she came into the office, and I had just gotten this, know how long ago this was, newspaper. I just got in the news, and I wanted her to see this article so bad. I wanted her to see this article so bad because I wanted her to see someone talk about how amazing she was and how brilliant she was and how she changed the generation and she changed us musically. And I worked so hard to like show her this article. I was like, no, Miss Houston, you should totally read it. It's amazing. It's a glowing review. They're talking about how you're the voice of a generation and all this stuff. And she's like, no, babe, I don't want to read it. She's like, I don't read any of it. Why? If I believe the good, then I also have to believe the bad. And I can't anything about me that's exterior to me. Mm-hmm. And that was like 15, almost 16 years ago. And that has stuck with me ever since then is that the power is within you, and you cannot allow things, good or bad, exterior to you to tell you who you are and what you're capable of. You have to know that the power rests in you. And if you believe that you can do it, you can. And if you believe that you can't, you can't.
It is true that you can manifest that energy,
Yeah.
and that is where your fire comes from. You found your fire,
Yeah.
or the fire found you. You decide.
Yeah.
Kim, you are so you. What I love about you is you can almost have a battle cry. You know, I joke that you were like the weaponized version of you. You know, you put on those masks for the coronavirus, for COVID-19. You go out there, and I look and I'm like, this woman is a warrior princess. But then you have the ability to dial it all back down to, this is about self-awareness and this is about self-worth. And if you don't have self-worth, you can't be the warrior princess for social justice. You can't be the best-selling author. You can't be any of those things, because how is the rest of the world going to see you that way if you don't, you know?
Yeah, and if I've been to the will of everybody who tells me they like me, they don't like me, they like this part that I say, they don't like this part of they say, I would have 87 different people living inside of my body trying to please everybody. Not everybody's gonna like everything that you say. And guess what? And this is the part that we have to grapple with. Not everything that you say or do is gonna be right. Sometimes
Is
I'm
that where all those people in my head came from? Those 87 people?
all come from, and it's like we have to recognize that, and we have to own it when we make a mistake, right? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes I say the wrong thing, sometimes I do the wrong thing, but you know what, growth comes. Gilly, who will be up next, always says that, you know, growth comes from discomfort, and sometimes you have to sit in the discomfort of your mistake and not want, as Sonya Renee Taylor says, like, sometimes you got to prepare yourself to give somebody an apology and not wait on them to absolve you of your guilt, because then that's about you, that's not about them anymore. And it's like, that's the biggest thing that we don't want to do. We don't want to own our own shenanigans. We don't want to own our own mistakes. And I think, you know, you just have to be able to, you have to be prepared to do that part. You have to be prepared to do that piece. You have to, just as much as I want to be right and I want to be, um, thinking that I'm doing the right thing. The issue is, a lot of us want to be revered. And so when you want desperately to be revered, then you think you're above correction. And the moment you start thinking you're above correction, you are on a road for destruction for everybody near you, because none of us know it all. None of us have all the right answers. And if we're smart, we're growing and learning and getting better day by day. But if you think that you already got it and everything that comes out of your mouth is gold, we know somebody like that, then you're never going to grow. You're never going to learn.
That is so incredibly well said. And I want to know, you know, when you were writing with Gilly, did you grow more than you thought in that whole process? Were there mistakes that were made?
Yeah.
Was it a smooth process to tell this story?
No, God, no. This was really talking about a black and white woman sitting down having to write a book about race relations with my strong will and her strong will. No, it was not an easy process. And we had days where we were like, you know what, I don't like you today and I don't want to talk to you for a few days. I'm checking out on you. But
Wow.
at the end of the day, we always knew that our friendship was like the most important thing. And so we always tried to center that. But also, you know, Gilly and I have a theory that compromise is not always meeting in the middle. Compromise sometimes is just conceding that the other person is right or more passionate about the point and letting that win. And the book, it was better served for having that perspective versus let's water it down in the middle.
That is so true. And Gilly just yelled truth. She yelled, I say, with the comment, because apparently there's volume in comments in my world. And now she's giving you the purple heart hug. So Kim, I'm gonna switch over to talk to Gilly. But before we go, I just want to say, you know, thank you for being with us, and the happily ever after. Tell me if I've got it right. It's about re-educating people in a way that tells a true history.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about making sure that you look into your heart and you're loving yourself first and understanding yourself first before you go after that battle.
Yeah, that is the bottom line. And for me, my happily ever after, which I'm blessed to say is now here and now happening, is just I want to spend the world educating people. I just want to spend the world educating people, whether that's through my movies or my books or marching in the streets or working to get the books changed in the school system. In every way, every day, I want people to be educated, to be more welcoming to the full gamut of the history, and also learning and growing so we can do better by each other.
Well, I appreciate you for that, and I appreciate your voice here tonight, because that's why I was compelled to have these conversations. We're alone a little bit right now with the pandemic, and I miss people, and there's a lot going on in our society right now where normally we would be talking to people and not be in this echo chamber of our own homes and socially distant and hearing all these opinions. So if we can help bring some of that dialogue to social media, then, hopefully we can keep these debates alive. So Kim,
Yeah.
thank you. You know I'm going to bug you again.
Yes, please do. I'm so
Please
excited.
talk to me all the time.
Boogie.
What was that?
I say I'm so excited to hear you talk to my boo now.
Oh, you two are so funny. Let me just tell, before you go, I'm going to tell everybody a little funny story too. So like day one, right, of this writing festival, which was amazing, met all these amazing people. I'm the first one in the cafeteria. I'm sitting there quietly. Kim's sitting there quietly. We're like eating our cereal, right? We're looking at each other. What are we doing in Chattanooga, Tennessee, all dressed up at 7 o'clock in the morning? We must be here for the same festival, right? So we start chatting. I meet Gilly. Well, the next day I can't find Kim anywhere. Nowhere. And Gilly can't find her either. And there's a reason for this. Next thing we know, we see Kim like skulking along the wall. And she's like, no, I'm hiding from my co-author. I'm hiding from Gilly. I owe her a chapter and I didn't do the edits and she's going to kill me. I got to go. And so literally you two were chasing each other around. Next thing I see Gilly going, has anybody seen Kim? I'm like, I was just eating my Cheerios. I was never here.
All right.
You guys are the best. Kim, thank you. We're going to see you so soon.
Yes, see you soon. Miss you. See you soon. Hey, Dom.
Yes. Yes. Hey to everybody. And thank you everybody who's weighing in. I'm reading all those thoughts. So I know that Gilly is standing by too. And this is the craziness of the reality that we're in right now, is that we can't have anybody necessarily together at the same time. But the upside of that, I guess, is that we've gotten used to this as a way to connect, and it doesn't seem as strange to just be talking to a screen. I guess I do that for a living in news, but you don't really get the feedback. And what's cool about this is that I can actually read the comments. So I feel like I'm having a conversation with everybody here too. And, I read Gilly and Kim's book, and then I listened to it as an audiobook. And it was so interesting to hear it because in many ways, the actresses, the voice actors captured Gilly and Kim's personality. There's so much that comes into a book when you write it that is you and is not you. You pour your heart and soul into it in terms of observations and the way that you look at the world. But of course, the characters are made up and the events are not necessarily the way that they really happened in your life. But when Gilly joins us, she's going to tell us about how she came up with the idea. But this was particularly compelling to me because she saw a news story. She saw a news story where there were riots and racial tensions rising. And so what they did is they ended up having to block streets off and enact a curfew in Baltimore. And she was wondering what happened to this group of kids at a high school who got blocked off from their typical route home and had to walk home in the middle of the night in a city that was on the edge of erupting. And within that, then she thought to herself, okay, well, I can write from my perspective, but how do we write if we have a white girl and an African-American girl and they're trying to get through this city together, who can I write with? And so she prepared this whole big thing for Kim, where it was like bullet point by bullet point, and that expecting that she'd have to convince Kim, and Kim will tell the story that Gilly was like, would you like to write a book with? And she's like, yep. And Gilly's like, well, let me tell you what it's about. Yep. So they already were kind of on the same chemistry, the same brain waves to do this together. And I think for me, I also really love the idea that we're doing young adult fiction that tackles big topics, because that's when we are finding ourselves, you know? So I look back and I read these and I think about those formative moments, but I also think it's so important that these books are in classrooms and that younger people are starting to grapple with these bigger topics, and that we can talk about things like race in America in a book like this in the classroom. And this is calling all Gillies, calling all Gillies. Where are you, Gilly? Is that you as a Zoom? I'm not sure. But the interesting thing about YA too, and why I'm drawn to it, I think, is because of covering things in news and looking backwards versus being in the moment. So when I'm covering a live shot, I compare it to, do I want to talk about what was found in the ashes after the fire burned down the house? Or do I want to talk about the fire? Do I want to be right there and say, this is what started it? This is how they survived. So here's Gilly now. She's saying, hi, Gilly. Come on board. We want to talk to you now. And I think that that's why I love young adult YA so much, is because it's just that moment of being plunged into the fire of life and those things that form you later on in life. And as authors, if we can help forge some of that, those formative moments, those moments of transition, we're almost doing a service. We're fueling ideas of empathy and politics and sociology. And I think that you have to find the right partners to do it, you know? So it's about who you connect with. And I certainly connected with Gilly and Kim, and the way that they connected with each other has now given them a book that gives them a platform. Oh, and here is your face. See, I'm hugging you through this faraway phone.
Too, and give me just 1 second. We have a technical difficulty here. Okay,
It's called, I think it was an earthquake. I don't think it was a technical difficulty.
Or it was user error. With me, more often than not in the technology, it's user error.
With me, it's just bad luck, and I'm absolutely cursed. And everybody thinks it's user error, and then they hang out with me for 5 minutes, Gilly, and they realize they're like, this has never happened to anybody in the history of ever, except for me. So it is so good to see you, and what a crazy ride it's been for both of you. I mean, I met you, and you were like, so we have this little book, and we wrote it together. And then that little book made some big waves. And you were at national award shows, and now fill everybody in who might not know exactly what the gist of your book is.
Sure. So I'm Not Dying With You Tonight is the story of two girls, one black and one white, who get caught in a riot that is breaking out in their city, and they have no choice but to work together to get home safely. And Kim and I co-authored it. It's written in alternating chapters from Lena, who is the black girl, and Campbell, who is the white girl. And Kim
Campbell Soup.
Yeah, Campbell Soup, which she has to earn that nickname. That nickname is really important when you read the book and you recognize that Campbell is not always Campbell Soup. Sometimes she's Becky.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the funny and embarrassing story. Lena calls Campbell a Becky probably 30 times over the course of the novel. And when we started writing it, I didn't know what that meant. Classic white girl, right? And had to ask him, like, why should she quit calling her Becky? And that ended up becoming a part of the conversation in the novel. It's a really
So
good
what made you want to write this story then, and what made you reach out to Kim? If you sit there, you say, I didn't even know what Becky meant. And to me, that says, you know what? Lucky you. You grew up in a place where perhaps tensions weren't that overt. And so you didn't know that was a way of referring to each other. And so what made you be so compelled that you wanted to write this story? And why was Kim the alternating voice for you?
Yeah. It's a really great question. So why compelled to write the story? We started writing this in 2015 when there were a lot of protests across the country, some of which were becoming violent. And I'm a writer and I process by writing, right? And wanted to tell this story. And in particular, there was this event that occurred in Baltimore. So in Baltimore, when the protests over the death of Freddie Gray were transpiring, a lot of them began in and around a high school, actually. And a flyer goes out asking people to come and join the protest. And, you know, the cops and the authorities get wind of this and they decide they're going to put a stop to it. And so they make two really stupid choices. The first is they close down public transportation in the area. And the second is they send kids home from school early. So now you've got this mass of kids who's been told to go and they have no way to get there safely. And as you mentioned, there was a news clip about a school bus that got caught behind a police barricade. And I'm a mom. My kids are a little bit younger than the kids that in that event. And I just went, oh my God, what happened to those kids? How did they get home safely? Did they get home safely? And even if they did, this has to have been like a transformative moment in their lives. And so I wanted to write about that story. But I also know that I cannot write the story of race relations in America by myself. It's not my place. It's not my role. I could never do it justice. The principle from which I operate are two, right? I have two like core principles: write the very best story I can and do no harm to anybody. And so attempting to tell this story myself, even doing the very best that I could, I don't have the lived experience to tell the story of a Black girl in this experience for myself. So Kim and I knew each other a little bit. We weren't like close enough friends that I had her phone number. So I had to go and lurk around the little shop of stories when she was on shift and be like, Kim, you want to write this book with me? Kim is incredibly creative. She's fascinating and interesting. It's what's lovely to me about this moment when Kim's everybody is aware of her is this isn't who she is today. This is who she has always been. She has always talked about these topics. She has always been educating us on this. And we're just all aware of her now, right? Like that video blew up and now we're all like, oh, but this is always who she's been, right? And if you've known her, this is always how she has educated us and shared her knowledge with us. So I knew immediately that I wanted to work with Kim. Had she said no, I'd have been like, this story's not going anywhere, because it was a creative experience that I wanted us to have together.
She said that there were some days where things got tense. Yeah. You know, is it a little microcosm of the conversations that are happening nationally now? Are there some things that surprised you, surprised her? I mean, that's kind of what happens in the book, is that these two young girls don't think that they are misinformed. They don't realize they have misperceptions. And I think that that's such an important thing for us to all think about right now is what might we be thinking incorrectly about?
Oh, I love that question. Yes. I mean, yeah, we absolutely had tense days. Talking about race is difficult. And I'm in some ways, I would argue if you're not having tense moments, maybe the white people in the conversation aren't doing the work like they should, right? We should feel deeply, deeply uncomfortable confronting the painful truths about what it's like to live as a Black person in America for the last 400 years. And so if you're not uncomfortable and confronting whether or not the way that racism works is expressed systemic injustice, then you're not really digging deep enough into how you perpetuate and participate in that system. So yeah, we absolutely have those conversations. I think it was a microcosm. I suppose what Kim and I have that I would wish for the world, and this is, you know, I'm not a particularly like naive, idealistic person, so this is a little more idealistic than I usually get, but at core, Kim and my friendship matters. It means the world to me, right? It comes first. We're writing together and that's a business for us, but we're also friends. And so I think what we had is the desire to work together. And again, that do no harm principle, like it's not hard for me to say, I'm wrong. I don't know. I didn't know this was offensive. And I'm sorry. And I wish that piece of it was more part of the dialogue, the national dialogue. I see actually in this moment more movement toward that than I have before. I think what excites me and encourages me about this moment is I think we're on the cusp of real change. We have the potential to achieve it. I don't think we've achieved it yet, but more people are talking about and acknowledging systemic injustice and racism than I have seen in the past. And that's exciting to me.
Did you ever think, I mean, obviously you were probably thinking, I want to tell a good story. Tell a good story, do no harm. That's what you just said. Did you ever think that you would be catapulted into a conversation about social change? You know, you knew the topic that you were dealing with, but obviously the current events sort of all aligned into this perfect storm. And has that changed what your fairy tale is? Does that change what you hope to see happen in the trajectory of your life?
We had always hoped to be part of this conversation. So I view art as a portal into difficult conversations, right? The way that I first started having difficult conversations about race was actually at a play where there was a talk back afterwards with the actors, written by a local playwright named Ginny Schaefer. And so that shaped my notion that art is a portal into difficult conversations. So I think I always dreamed that this book could be a portal for some people. Now, on this scale, that's kind of beyond my wildest dreams, and I'm thrilled. Does it change my happily ever after? I'm leery of the notion of happily ever after because it suggests an ending of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of want to say, like, is this my happily along the way? Yeah, this is my happily along the way.
I like that. See, I'm so optimistic that I think like happily ever after just means it starts right now and then it just lasts forever, right? Like I'm going to be happy now, and it'll just carry me until I'm, 99 and sitting there talking about nonsense to somebody who doesn't want to listen to me when I'm 99 years old. But
Well, you can talk to me about that because I'm here for it.
Okay. All right. Can we retire together somewhere and we'll just have crazy conversations?
Absolutely.
The interesting thing about what happily along the way or happily ever after is that it changes along the way, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you started out in your career, and not just your writing career, but any job that you've had, how did you envision what you wanted? And then how did you turn it into action?
Oh, I love that question. So every job that I've had that I have loved is a job that I didn't apply for an off-the-shelf job. I created it. And it actually started, I grew up in the Tampa Bay area, actually. And it started because I'm a huge Tampa Bay Lightning fan. I want you to know I'm missing third overtime of the Tampa Bay Lightning game to be here with you right now. Go Bolts. But I, as a teenager, I was interested in journalism and I really wanted to write for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And so I wrote sort of like a mock article for, at the time, it was the St. Pete Times, disagreeing with their rival paper's analysis of something. It was the Tampa Trib. And I sent it off to the guy and said, I want to intern for you. And he wrote back and said, we've never had an intern before, but I'm really intrigued that you took the initiative to do this and that you disagreed with my rival paper. And so let's give it a shot. And so at 17 years old, I was interning. Someone in the comments is saying fourth overtime, my blood pressure can't take it. And so we created out of nothing this internship. And I think that was the first time that I realized that the path can be mine to forge if I wanted to. And so, that I've sort of carried that, mentality with me is if I don't see the path that I want to be on, I'm going to forge it for myself. The current job that I have, I love my day job as much as I love my writing. I'm an in-house counsel for an advertising agency called 22 Squared. And the role of in-house counsel didn't exist before I started working there. We created this job because they had some legal needs and I had a desire to change my role. And so we created it together, and I'm incredibly happy. I can't imagine being such a happy lawyer somewhere else. So it's about saying, what makes me happy? What do I want to do? And if it doesn't exist, how could we create it?
That's so important, but it's also very bold, Gilly. A lot of people don't have the guts to say, you know what, this is what I want, and I'm going to go out there and tell this company, this boss, this community that they need me to do A, B, and C because that's what's going to make me happy. Yeah. So once somebody's able to isolate, which is a journey in of itself, what it is that they want to do, what's some advice that you have to forge that path? What are some steps that they could take to say, hey, this opportunity doesn't exist, but make it for me and I will make it worth your time?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is not having the courage to succeed. It's having the courage to fail. Because if you're going to forge your own path, you're going to fail along the way. It's not all going to be wine and roses from the first time that you ask. And I think the thing that I prize most is not the ability to take the leap off the cliff. It's when you fall and you sort of get bruised and broken a little bit, it's getting back up and repairing yourself or seeking support, right? This isn't my path has not been a solo one. My journey is not alone. I have lots of support in my life. So it's leaning on my support systems and having the courage to try again after you failed, right? To pick yourself up, to get help picking yourself up and keep going.
We teach our children to do that, right? when they're learning to walk. Yeah, and then we somehow forget along the way sometimes.
I think we do. And I think, there's so much pressure on people, especially once you hit the age where you've got life commitments like a family or children or a mortgage. And it's not easy to put those things at risk. And so I say this with sort of no criticism of someone who's like, I'm not in a place where I can take those risks yet. I hope that people build toward them as they go. But, it's hard. It's hard to decide to make big change in your life. It can be worth it. But it's not like it's this easy magical thing.
It's not easy, but anything that's worth it isn't.
Yeah. And sometimes it won't work out, but then other times it will, and it'll work out really big. So it's worth it.
What's the next big thing for you?
That's a good question. So Kim and I are working on a second book. I also, I'm very excited for that. I also want to write. I have some solo projects that I'm working on, and I finally finished a draft that I don't want to light on fire and throw out the window. So hopefully that I write mysteries when I'm writing solo projects. So hopefully that mystery will see the light of day someday.
Well, I mean, if you follow your own advice, it will see the light of day. And if somebody doesn't want it, we'll go this way. We'll go this way.
And Kim mentioned that we are sort of alluded to a secret project that we're working on. So I hope that will come to fruition. It just might take a minute for us to put it together. But
how important is being stubborn and manifesting what you want? How important is your mindset?
I would say stubbornness is 50% of it, because there's always redirection in life. I think it's Oprah who has said that failure is not a sign that it's that you are a problem. It's that you are on the wrong path, and it's the universe way of shifting you onto your right path. So being stubborn and not giving up is 50% of it. And the other 50% of it is being open when the universe is redirecting you. So, a good example of this is my legal career, right? I started out working for a very traditional big law firm, and I learned a lot there, and I loved it. I worked with wonderful people, but I really wasn't happy, right? It wasn't the ultimate long-term job that I wanted. And so when this opportunity to work with the agency started to become a glimmer, it was, instead of being stubborn and saying like, no, I set out on the path to become a partner at a big law firm, I'm going to stick with doing that. It was, a window is opening. Let me see if I can pry that window up, climb out and be in a new place and space. So 50% stubborn, 50% open to redirection.
I love that. Open to redirection. And I think that's the big message that I hope that all of these conversations will bring to the people who take a minute to watch, because I think people are hard on themselves. And when they get redirected, they get confused and think that they have somehow failed. And in a world that we're in right now, with the stuff that we're facing externally right now, we don't have time or energy or space for that kind of self-doubt. So it's all a big journey of the happily ever after in here. It's the one thing that we can maybe control.
Yeah, I think we can. Yeah. I think we should reframe failure, right? Like, we think of failure as a negative and to be avoided all costs, right? Big risks have big rewards. And if we reframe the notion of failure as something to celebrate, not when we're hurting people, right? Like a distinction in taking a big risk that didn't pay off, right? If we have, to me, failure is when I hurt somebody that I love, or I let somebody down that was counting on me. Those are real failures. But taking a risk that didn't succeed, that's not a failure to me. And I would love for us to reframe this notion of failures. There used to be an entrepreneurial series called, is your audience a swearable audience or a non-swearable audience?
I think we can swear as long as it's not terrible. We'll see what happens.
We'll count it. F up next. Right? So there used to be this series that I would listen to of entrepreneurs. They would have F up nights where they would invite really, really successful people to tell the story of their worst screw up, their worst failure. More often than not, out of their worst failure grew some of their greatest successes. And so that's why I'm like, it's not really a failure if you took a risk and it didn't succeed, because you moved on to something else.
Yeah. I love that. I love what you said. You know what? I think that I'm going to say that this story is, once upon a time, there was no such thing as failure. There we go. and that is the happily ever after. Gilly, you are the best. And you know what? I'm going to go let you find your fairy tale, which is watching the Lightning game.
Go Bolts.
I know. I didn't know that I took you from that. I'm so sorry. But
It was
Sorry,
worth
not sorry, because you are incredible and your brain needed to be borrowed and shared with the world for half an
so
hour.
glad to do it. Thank you so much for having me.
You got it. I want to see you again soon.
Anytime.
Bye.
Bye.
Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out with Gilly and Kim. I knew I wanted to talk to them and bring their insight to you, but they perpetually blow me away because these are the people that I'm bringing to you are individuals who have impressed me in my life and have inspired me in some way to try a little bit harder and to be less hard on myself along the way. And so I think that the takeaway tonight is just to look inside yourself and ask what it is that you want, first of all. And then if somebody tells you no, is there a different way to go? And to believe that you're worth it. You know, we don't all have the freedom, right, economically, or just, you know, the logistics to chase our big daydreams all the time. But if we find small ways to bring that into our daily life, even if we don't have the financial freedom to run off and pursue that big fairy tale dream, you bring the happiness in just a little bit. And you can spend an hour, you can spend a minute doing something you love, or at least being with the people that you love, and finding those kindred spirits and that community. And that's why I'm doing this. So this is my community that makes me feel a little bit better about daydreaming big and talking to each other about how to achieve big dreams. So if you have anybody that has inspired you, if you have anybody that you want to hear from, shoot me a message, direct message, and let me know. Nominate someone, you know, call them right out underneath one of these series and let me know, because this is what it's all about. It's learning from each other and the network and growing it and finding the people who can help us all grow and just be better. And I'm going to see you guys again on Thursday night with another amazing author, Jeff Zentner. And he and I talk a lot about that same notion of what does it mean to fail and what does it mean to change? What does it mean to matter? How do you find your voice? And he has an incredible story of moving from music to novel writing, and an approach toward being an artist in this world as having a role toward building empathy in this world. And so I really like the notion of what do you do with your art? What do you do with your dreams? And how do you make a little bit of a difference where you go? And how do you use that to keep fueling your fire? So tune in again Thursday. That's going to be another awesome conversation. And thank you so much for hanging out with me right now, guys. We have, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes before Instagram tells me that I've talked too long. Something random and funny that I'll tell you right before we go. We read from a teleprompter at work. And before you go to the next show, they literally put a cue in for me that says, stop talking, stop talking, stop talking, stop talking. So anyone who knows me knows I need that. So here's my cue to stop talking. And I can't wait to start talking with you guys all again on Thursday. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Thanks for hanging out.